Hello everyone, I'm Captain Courageous and I review old school modules and games and try to give them a fun and informative analysis. This week I'm reviewing X5, Temple of Death. This classic expert module was written by TSR luminary Dave Cook, best known for writing the Expert set in 1981 along with Tom Maldvay, as well as many classic game supplements and adventures for Star Frontiers, TSR's Conan the Barbarian role-playing game, The Adventures of Indiana Jones, as well as A1 Slave Pits of the Undercity, I1 Dwellers of the Forbidden City, B6 The Veiled Society, as well as the lead designer in the second edition of Dungeons & Dragons. He invented the Planescape setting and a lot more. Dave's contributions to D&D and gaming in general can't be overstated. This module is also the continuation of X4 Master of the Desert Nomads, which I reviewed last week. If you haven't already watched that review, you might want to do that now. Just a quick spoiler warning, this is a 37-year-old module. If you would like to play this in your game, you might want to direct your DM here so it will spark their interest. Still with me? Alright, let's begin. Published in 1983, X5 Temple of Death is a continuation of X4 Master of the Desert Nomads and takes the PCs on a wilderness adventure odyssey through the hostile land of Huel and ultimately to the aforementioned Temple of Death, where they will face their enemy, the Master, and their fate as well as the fate of their home kingdom will be decided. Like the previous adventure and most of Dave Cook's works, this is a heavily pulp fantasy inspired adventure. A few weeks ago, I did a review of the OSR game Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea, and I think these two adventures would easily fit right in with that system's style of play. For the most part, the land of Huel is bereft of demi-humans, and humanoids like gnolls and orcs are lived with in relative peace, though on occasion each raids the other's lands. The previous adventure, X4 Master of the Desert Nomads, ended once the PCs found the entrance to the Great Pass through the Black Mountains. X5 picks up where X4 left off, with the PCs traversing through the pass. The encounters here are almost a mini-campaign unto themselves if the DM wishes to develop them out further. For example, it's entirely possible to journey to Mystara's moon with the Well of the Moon encounter. Also, like the previous module, the DM is going to have to sculpt out some of the legacy D&D tropes, and the page count means a lot of the character and scope of the kingdom the PCs are traveling through, Huel, will have to be filled in by the DM. Of course, in the year 2020, a lot of resources are available for a DM wishing to fill in those details. For both the Cindy Desert and the Kingdom of Huel, let me recommend to you the Vaults of Pandius website, which has a wealth of information as it does with all things dealing with Mystara. There's also the Champions of Mystara box set, which gave the area a pretty decent treatment as well, and has a nice full-size color map of the area. It's available on PDF, though a box set will cost you a pretty penny. One of the things I don't particularly care for that is described in the module is that the people of Huel are either chaotic or neutral, yet how much they adhere to their religious belief certainly indicates that there are many lawful among the people, so I would simply ignore that passage. As with the previous module, Dave Cook does a great job of lining up the various encounters to meet the PCs rather than PCs traveling to a specific hex on the map. For example, Cook simply has the town of Magden being placed where the DM feels it's most convenient, and then suggests the DM mark the place on his map where Magden ends up being for future reference. I'm a big fan of this technique, and I've used it myself for years. The culture of Huel is broken down into specific class roles, and it's clear that Cook took inspiration from Babylonian, Indian, and Cambodian myths for this adventure. There are holy men at the top, followed by diviners, hermits, prophets, clergy, and then the commoners. In Magden, it's entirely possible for the PCs to be captured, though that is not the intent of the town's inclusion. But if they are diligent, they can learn the general location of the Master's abode, though it is not referred to as the Temple of Death by the people, but it instead is called the Great Realm. The way this tidbit of information is revealed to the players is really quite clever. There's a puppet show in the marketplace, and through the dialogue of the puppet play, they can learn that the Temple of Death is called the Great Realm, and that the Master probably controls a storm giant. If one thing should be made clear by these encounters in Magden, defeat of the Master will most likely not be accomplished by brute force, and just how dangerous it will be going there, and this should give the PCs a little pause. The module does briefly describe an encounter with one of the prophets, whereby the unnamed prophet will give them direction to the Great Realm if they were unable to discover such while in Magden. The prophet is not even given a name, and it's basically a nudge in the direction of the temple, but this could be so much more interesting of an encounter. This is why the entire chaotic and neutral thing annoys me. Helping the PCs is an act of defiance against the Master, and it's entirely possible this prophet is on the side of law. I would definitely give this prophet a name and develop him out more, and give the culture of Huel a bit more nuance and interest. The next major encounter area is in the Dark Wood, and here they can gather more clues as to the true nature of the Master and possible ways he might be overcome, as well as some deadly combat encounters. An encounter with a mystical obelisk causes a bolt of lightning to strike from the sky, causing glowing red letters to appear on the obelisk's face. It conveys a poem to the heroes, and deciphering its hidden meanings will prove valuable later. Near Lake Tross in the Dark Wood is the object of the hero's quest, the Temple of Death. The rendering of the map of the place, as well as the artistic handout that is to be given to the players, is really quite good, and certainly to my mind one of the best artistically and architecturally rendered maps of the era. Only Ravenloft, released in the same year, would compare. In scope and design, it seems the temple takes inspiration from the real-life Cambodian Temple of Angkor Wat, and the DM might use that as a descriptor to give the players a powerful visual that can pull the drawings off the page and spur the imagination. Though this is no ruin, it is an active and vibrant place with priests and guards about. Rash action here will end the PCs quickly, and the DM should take some effort to stress this to them. The module does something here that absolutely annoys me to no end, and this is a trait of many modules of this era, and that is the means by which to defeat the Master is not conveyed prominently to the DM anywhere in the module except for a minor blurb on page 25 in the description of the Master's chamber. Here, the heroes can uncover the Master's battle plans, and if those are taken back to the authorities, the Master's forces will ultimately be defeated. Thus, it is not necessary to kill the Master at all to save their lands. In fact, actually killing the Master is a nearly impossible task because he has many clerics and powerful allies to call on a moment's notice, and a ready means of escape in the event things are going badly for him. Thus, using stealth and guile to make their way through the temple, get the battle plans, and return to their home kingdom is the most logical means to conclude this adventure, though the module provides no specific way to relay this information to the heroes. In fact, the module's text suggests that taking the time to observe the routines of the temple before attempting to invade it is optional, when clearly, if the adventure is to be completed successfully, it's not. Thus, my suggestion is for the prophet that is encountered after leaving Magnum be used to convey this information to them. As I said on my previous review on X4, DM finesse is of utmost importance here so that this exposition dump doesn't come off overly railroady. Perhaps the prophet approaches the PC's camp at night as they are settling down to eat, asking to share their camp for the night, and through casual conversation the DM can bring this suggestion to light. Regardless, once the plans are in the hands of the PCs, the module simply ends, though certainly there is a whole other adventure to be had here, as now most likely fugitive PCs make their way back through Huel to the Great Pass with the stolen plans. Thus, the DM can end the adventure here through exposition, or through their own invention play out the harrowing journey back to the Great Pass. Just a quick correction from my previous review. I said the artwork for the cover of X4 was done by Jeff Easley when in fact it was rendered by Harry Quinn. Artwork for X5 is done by comic book artist Tim Truman. There are some really interesting artistic choices made in this module. Most of the art is rendered in a sepia color and quite technical. I particularly like the player handout for the Temple of Death and the way the map architecturally lines up accurately with the drawing. Everything here just looks absolutely amazing in my opinion. As you can see here, the map of the temple takes up the full length of this cardstock cover, and in the PDF available at DriveThruRPG, it is not cut in two, but is presented as all one piece. Acquiring a copy of X5 Temple of Death is not that difficult. eBay has original print copies going for between $20 and $40, and DriveThruRPG has the PDF and a print on demand available as of right now for only $4.99. Definitely worth picking up at that price, though I do find it annoying that X4 is not available for print on demand while X5 is. Weird. Anyway, let's take a look at X5 Temple of Death on my D20 scale of style, presentation, and value. Style-wise, I'm totally sold on Tim Truman's artwork and the sepia style of the maps and renderings. Maybe it's just because it's different from the straight black and white art of modules of this era, but I applaud the style choices here. The cover art is evocative, and the renderings of the wilderness map and the temple map are top-notch and some of the best of this era, and I'll rate it a 19. For me, it's the presentation that is the stumbling block of this module, falling back on certain D&D tropes such as the failure to properly convey where certain important aspects of the module can be found, leaving it to the DM to have to discern such from massive text walls is really unforgivable. There's a lot of railroad potential here if things are not handled with finesse, and the module gives no direction on how to handle certain important aspects. That said, there are a ton of inspirational set-piece encounters here, from the moonbeam ladder at the Great Pass to the puppet show in the town of Magda, as well as the realistic setup of Huel and the temple itself. There's also a lot of good here. Huel seems like a place that could really exist, and this is a gritty and dangerous adventure that will absolutely challenge the players. I'll rate this a 15. Finally, let's take a look at value. Once again, this is easy to get at auction, and the price at DriveThruRPG makes this a super easy decision to obviously rate a natural 20 critical hit. Come on guys, it's $4.99 for print on demand. Natural 20. That brings the overall rating for X5 Temple of Death to an 18. Very good. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this review interesting, fun, and helpful. Saturday I'll have more World of Mystara material for you with a look at the Principalities of Glantry. As usual, I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to my Patreons. If you enjoyed this review, please subscribe and click the little bell so you'll get updates when I add new content. Please give this video a like, comment, and share. Join the channel's Facebook page, RPG Reviews, and consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron yourself. Or alternatively, you can just leave a tip to the PayPal tip jar, link in the description. As always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.